Hey, Mike Portnoy here.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you so very much for taking the time to do this interview.
No problem, man. My pleasure. I'm glad we were able to sort it out.
Yeah, same here. I mean, like you've read, you are the biggest name on my bucket list for all of the musicians that I've ever taught to, and it's just an honor to be able to finally be able to help represent new stuff that you have coming along, especially the new Neal Morse double album.
Well, thank you, man. I'm glad. This is, I guess, a good example of be careful what you wish for. hopefully you'll be satisfied with the results. But man, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, not a problem. Well, first of all, before we get into the Neal Morse stuff, I wanted to ask you, how did you enjoy Proc Power this year? I was also there as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that was my first time going. I've been hearing about it forever, for years now. And I was finally able to make it out this year. I mean, the main reason I went this year is because I had to see Fates Warning doing Awaken the Guardian. That's one of my favorite albums of all time.
Oh, yes.
And those guys, the original lineup, still all dear friends of mine. John Arch is somebody that's been a great friend for so many years, but also, Frank Oresti and Bones and all those guys, they're old friends. And it was, I couldn't miss them reuniting and doing this album. So, yeah, I went mainly to see that, but the whole experience was awesome. And obviously it was great to see Haken. I've seen them a million times now, but they're always so amazing. One of the best prog bands out there, these days. And the whole experience was great. And then I got to be there when they announced my appearance next year, so that was exciting. And the whole experience was awesome. And I'm looking forward to finally performing there myself next year.
Yeah, and it's awesome to see that you're going to be there twice within 2 years. I mean, I was there, of course, when Fates Warning did all of Awaken the Guardian. That was my very first Fates Warning album, and it was amazing to finally be able to see that live with the original lineup. And now next year, I finally get to see you play after a very long time with Shattered Fortress. How did it come about being able to be a part of Prog Power next year?
Well, the whole Shattered Fortress thing kind of started with my 50th birthday bash, which is going to happen on Cruise to the Edge in February. I had this idea of putting together this kind of career retrospective concert to kind of cover, the last 30 years of my career. And obviously, inevitably, Dream Theater music has to be a big part of that concert because obviously that music was such a huge part of my life. So, when thinking about what Dream Theater songs to play, it was pretty obvious that this was the right time and place to finally do the 12-step suite. I've been wanting to play it live in its entirety ever since I came up with the idea. That was always the intention. So it seemed like this was the right time and place to finally do that. And once word got out that I was doing it at my 50th birthday concert, suddenly these invites started coming in from these other prog festivals. Night of the Prog in Lorelei, Germany, and Be Prog, My Friend in Spain. And then the first one to come out and approach me with the offer was Prog Power in Atlanta. And I guess as soon as they heard about it, they asked if I'd be willing to do it. And I figured, you know what? Yeah, it's not like I want to do this 12-step thing for a career move, but it's like, you know what, being it's up and running and it's rehearsed and not everybody's going to be able to make the cruise, why not? Maybe I'll just do it at some select places. And Prog Power was the first to announce their freestanding Shattered Fortress show.
And that just made me so happy because when I was there watching the lineup, my jaw dropped when I saw you in the video, and I never was expecting something like Shattered Fortress to happen. Like, I was just assuming it was going to be a pipe dream to be able to see the whole 12-step suite, but next year I finally get to see it.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm going to be able to do it in a few places and not just the cruise, because it is something that I do want to share with people. I know there's a lot of fans around the world that have wanted to see that, and for me it's a lot of unfinished business personally that I really want to kind of just finally do. So yeah, I'm glad I'm going to be able to share it at a few different places and not just on the cruise. It's going to be cool.
Oh, very much so.
And I should also mention Max's band Next to None is also going to play Prog Power, so it's going to be really awesome for the Prog Power audience to get to see him. I think his band's growing at incredible leaps and bounds, and people are going to be blown away with what they're doing. doing. So I'm glad I could share that as well.
Oh yeah, I had the opportunity to talk to Max last year when the debut album for Next to None came out, and
Oh,
that
really? Cool.
that was an awesome experience as well. So. And it's great to be able, within a year, be able to talk to both Portnoy drummers and get to see them both live within a few days, since I have tickets all 4 days of Prog Power next year, so I get to see Next to None and Shattered Fortress.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm sure this is a little far in advance, but have you thought about what kind of setup you're going to be using for the Shattered Fortress set?
Oh, yeah. But, a lot of the things I'm leaving for surprise, obviously.
Yes.
I was even hesitant to announce that I was doing it at all on Cruise to the Edge, once we did announce it, all these other opportunities arose. So I guess in a way I'm kind of glad I did. But otherwise, I'm keeping everything having to do with Shattered Fortress pretty much a secret. And it will be unveiled on my 50th birthday party. And then from there, the word will be out. Who's in the band, what we're playing, the gear, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it'll all soon be revealed.
Oh, very cool. Oh, one thing, you don't have to go into details, but I kind of remember hearing something about this where for other select shows, you're going to be doing more than just the 12-step suite. Is Prog Power one of those shows?
It depends on the set list, the set length time that I'm given. So I'm not sure. I don't recall how much time I'm being given at Prog Power, but the 12-step suite is about an hour. So any shows where I'm given more than an hour, then I'll be able to play additional songs. So it's all going to depend on the set length I'm given.
Oh, very cool. Again, I'm just happy to be able to see that the 12-step suite is getting played in its entirety with all these shows, and any additional songs that you get to play is just that much more of a bonus.
Yeah, totally.
So let's get right into the new Neal Morse double album, which you are a part of. And as you warned me not to make my best of list yet because I had not received the album yet, but I've gotten the chance to listen to it since then, setting up this interview, been listening all weekend, and I gotta agree with you, this is some of the finest work you've ever done.
Thank you. Yeah, we're obviously very, very proud of it, and I've been talking about it for months now, and it's obvious how excited I am by it. So it's great to finally have the fans be able to listen and enjoy this stuff, and the response has been awesome. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and I'm definitely one of them too, because I love the way that you approach working with Neal, and this time around going the full double album. Just like this concept and everything going on with every Neal Morse album, but just being able to expand more musical territory, it feels like this time around, like some heavier moments I haven't experienced on a Neal Morse album, some more acoustic-based moments as well. It's just such great variety.
Well, a big part of that is now that we're writing as a band. All the previous Neal Morse albums that I've done, from Testimony through Momentum, I think that was 7 or 8 albums right there. Essentially that was Neal's music and Neal playing everything with me and Randy playing drums and bass. And then, maybe making a suggestion here or there, but it's pretty much Neal's music. But now, the Similitude of a Dream, and as well as the Grand Experiment, it's the Neal Morse Band, and that word band really makes all the difference. And I think I got to give a lot of credit to Eric Gillette and Bill Hubauer. They bring so much to the band, not only in terms of performance, but in terms of writing. I think Bill's creative contributions are immense, and a song like "The Ways of the Fool," that's all Bill, to be honest. And if you're at the Grand Experiment, we did a cover of MacArthur Park, which was completely rewritten and rearranged, and that was Bill as well. So Bill brings an amazing creative element to the band, and then Eric, I think, brings a huge performance element. He's an amazing guitar player. He's one of the greatest guitar players out there. I think he's like the new breed of guitar heroes, and he also has an amazing voice. There's so many moments on the album that are huge vocal moments, and it's Eric singing those parts. So I think those guys really bring a lot to the band. And you mentioned a bit of a heavier element. I think a lot of that is coming from Eric's guitar style. He really reminds me a lot of John Petrucci in so many ways. So I think if you're hearing a little bit of a heavier, kind of more Dream Theater-esque sound or style, I think a lot of that is due to Eric's contributions.
Yeah, and it's great to see that it has come to a full band standpoint. As much as I love Neal Morse and the solo albums, and of course everything that you've been a part of with that, it's great to see it in a band formation and seeing the other members of the bands, new and old, getting to be able to contribute more to Neal Morse. And with that said, how did you approach your stuff when it came to the new album?
Well, my approach for this is the same as pretty much, every album I'm a part of, whereas I'm very involved and concerned with every element. A lot of people just think I'm thinking about the drums, but that could not be further from the truth. When I'm making a record, the drumming and the drum parts are literally the smallest piece of the puzzle. I'm usually spending all my time kind of directing the overall arrangement and the sequence and the production and the songwriting, and I think people really underestimate my involvement on a musical level, and it bothers me when people underestimate that, but they don't realize that, I have a lot of formal training. When I was at Berkeley, I took music theory and harmony and arranging and sight singing and ear training, so I could sit there and talk about progressions and modes and scales and melodies and notes and key signatures and time signatures. I'm as aware of that stuff as anybody, and then in some cases even more than some of the guys holding the stringed instruments. So yeah, I'm a big all of that, and make suggestions and ideas and in things well beyond the drums. But I should point out one other thing also, going back to the previous question about Neal and me collaborating with other people. It's interesting because Neal and I are in 3 different bands, and in each of these cases now, we collaborate. We have a very similar writing process now in all 3 bands. And people wonder, well, why are you and Neal in 3 different bands together? But really, each one of them creates a very, very different chemistry, a very different kind of environment. With Transatlantic, it's Neal and I working with Pete and Royna. And with Flying Colors, it's Neal and I working with Casey and Steve and Dave. And now Neal More Band, it's Neal and I working with Bill and Eric and Randy. So in each of these cases, it's our surroundings and the chemistry of the people that we're working with that kind of take us in very different directions. And I think all 3 bands now are very, very different from each other and give me and Neal a different outlet, musically and stylistically.
Yeah, I couldn't.
So there you go. You got 2 answers in one.
Oh, nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I was just going to agree with you. Ever since I first discovered Dream Theater from, I think it was Metal Maniacs or something like that, where you were doing an interview in a magazine talking about Train of Thought, and I learned all about what you did in the band before I discovered the band, and then just hearing everything that you'd done before and after that, and just knowing everything that you can do when it comes to producing and arrangements and all of the great stuff that you can do behind and in front of the drums. Being able to see that in so many other aspects as well. Like Dream Theater is so much different than Flying Colors and Transatlantic and Metal Allegiance. It shows that you have such a great variety for what you can do, and you can expand that much.
Well, I appreciate that. Honestly, it bothers the hell out of me when I see people talk about my old band these days and saying, well, it's so different. It's like, well, yeah, I should hope it's so different because I wasn't just the drummer there, and I see people like when I announced the 12-step suite, they're like, well, it's those guys wrote the music. Mike only wrote the lyrics and the melodies. No, look at the credits there. It says music by Portnoy, Petrucci, Mayung, Rudis. That could not be underestimated or enough. It's unfair because people really forget that. Yeah, I wrote the set list and did the merchandise and the fan clubs and all that stuff as well, but I think people are forgetting that I co-produced those albums and co-wrote the music and wrote the lyrics and the melodies. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I'm just trying to say it bothers me that is so quickly forgotten by a lot of the Dream Theater fans.
Yeah, that's one thing I learned about from reading those interviews before I actually checked out Train of Thought was how much time and effort that you put into everything behind and in front of the drums in the studio and everything involving a band that you're in. And sometimes whether you're in full charge of the band or you're just playing the drums in a band or whatever the case is, I know you put your full heart and effort into everything that you do.
Well, I appreciate that. It's nice to see that that's not forgotten or overlooked. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, not a problem. I not just fanboying out when I say that, too. It's just like I learned so much about you before I even got a chance to hear you play one note that I can really fully appreciate everything that you do in all aspects of what you've done. so far.
But to be honest, there's a certain gratification as well to the projects where I don't have any creative input whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
I really, two of my most favorite touring experiences of all time were the tours I did with Avenged Sevenfold back in 2010, and then recently with Twisted Sister the last 2 years. You know, there's no creative input whatsoever for me in either of those situations. And I was, in those cases, just a drummer. And there was something to be said for how enjoyable those two experiences were. And honestly, I wouldn't mind having more experiences like that in the future if I was ever called upon as a hired gun or to fill in for another established band and just come in and play drums. It's actually quite satisfying and just a lot of fun. I don't think I could ever do something like that on a full-time basis, but surely on the side and in addition to all the other things I do, it is a lot of fun as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you can just sit behind the kit and play and not have to worry about the merchandising or setting up the tours or just writing the music, just being able to sit down with a group of musicians and being able to play for a tour or studio work, it can be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was going to mention about Twisted Sister. Of course, you've been playing with them for a while, and I didn't realize that you were also here in Minnesota. Had I known that, I would have tried to make it out to that show. I didn't see that Twisted Sister was announced, but it's great to see someone of your caliber being able to help finish off Twisted Sister's career. How do you feel about it now in retrospect?
Well, it was a huge honor for me personally because I grew up with those guys. You know, I was a teenager on Long Island when they were playing the Long Island circuit in the early '80s, and I used to sneak into the clubs and see them. There's a picture in my high school yearbook of me wearing a Twisted Sister shirt. So, you know, I was a fan back then, and growing up in New York, I have a much different perspective on them than maybe other people in the world. There's probably a lot of people in America especially where they just look at Twisted Sister as like, you know, this band that had a couple of hits in the 80s on MTV and then that's it. But not for me. For me, I had this whole history, and there's a great documentary out there called "We Are Twisted Effin' Sister." It's on Netflix, and it shows you, you know, they were around for 10 years before they even got their record deal. So that was the Twisted Sister that I grew up with, and to be able to be on board with them these last 2 years and kind of be a part of this final chapter was just a huge honor. And stylistically, look, a lot of people are like, what? You know, Mike Portnoy is playing with Twisted Sister. They don't get it. But look, I'm a fan of everything. If you look at what I do, it should be pretty obvious. You know, between Metal, Legion of Blind Colors, Neal More Band, Adrenaline Mob, I mean, each one of these bands are so stylistically different from each other. And I'm as much of a Twisted Sister fan as I am a King Crimson fan. You know, to me, music is music, and I can appreciate all styles and enjoy playing all different styles. So stylistically, it was a natural fit for me, just as much as anything I've ever done that was prog or thrash or whatever. It's all a part of, you know, the bigger picture of who makes me who I am.
Yeah, and I think it definitely shows off too. I mean, to some people, like, they didn't realize that you could just like play simple 4/4 grooves like you would for Twisted Sister if they only know you for the technical aspects. And then there's some people out there who might just know you for Neal Moore's projects that didn't know that you could do something like Twisted Sister or Avenged Sevenfold. And you're just showing all these people everything that you're capable of behind the drums, whether it's something simpler like Twisted Sister, where you gotta be consistent and more on the floor, or in the technical aspects like the new Neal Moore's double album.
Look, it's all about, you know, doing what's appropriate for the style of the music you're playing. And I'm able to adapt from band to band and situation to situation because I am such a big music fan. You know, my music taste runs, you know, everything from Jellyfish to Sepultura and everything in between. You know, because I love music in all different styles, I'm able to adapt in these different situations, whether it be Avenged Sevenfold or doing Beatles covers with Yellow Matter Custard. You know, I love them all. It's all a piece. It's all a part of me.
And speaking of that, I mean, with having so much in your resume so far of all the different styles that you played in the studio, in a live setting, and everything else, do you see anything new coming into your playing within the next year or so, like any other genres or styles that you haven't tackled yet?
I don't think so. I think I've, you know, in the last 6 years, I've kind of tackled all of the things I love, and now it's a matter of just continuing to develop those different styles with these different bands. You know, I still have Winery Dogs, I still have Flying Colors, I still have Metal Allegiance. right there are three completely different styles. One's classic rock, one is more kind of alternative pop, one is metal. I still have the Neal More Band and Transatlantic, which are very proggy. PSMS might still do some stuff, which is more shredding kind of instrumental stuff, though. Honestly, I feel like I'm covering all bases at this point. I've never been like a jazz guy or a Latin guy. I think everything I'm going to do is going to kind of remain in the rock and metal world. And between all these different bands and projects I currently have going, I think I'm covering all the ground I'm interested in.
Yeah, and that definitely makes sense. And it doesn't sound like you're running thin at all. I mean, again, like I mentioned before, I can tell you're putting your heart and soul into every project that you're a part of, and I can tell that the rest of the guys that you get to jam with too are doing the same thing.
Well, to me, that's the greatest gift of everything that I've been a part of the last 6 years is the people I'm working with. And I'm blessed to have been surrounded by so many amazing musicians. My God, everybody. If you look at just the guitar players I've worked with in the last 6 years, Richie Kotzen, John Sykes, Alex Skolnick, Steve Morse, Eric Gillette, the list goes on and on and on. It's just every one of these guys are so great. Tony McAlpine, Paul Gilbert. It's such an honor to work with so many great musicians. And then, of course, you have Billy Sheehan and Neal Morse, and it's just, it's really been an amazing journey. And in the last 6 years in particular, it's been a who's who of everybody I could have ever wanted to play with or jam with. And beyond just the playing, to be able to write with these people, to sit there and write with Steve Morse or write with Richie Kotzen, and kind of put your heads together with these people and see not only how they play, but how they think and how they write. To me, that's been the greatest reward of all.
Yeah, and if you just had to take focus on just one band like Dream Theater, you might not have been able to explore all these different territories that you are able to as much as you have. And for a creative aspect, that is such an amazing thing to be able to play everything that you want to play with some of the best musicians out there and put out such amazing music in the process.
Look, there's no doubt that if I hadn't made that decision 6 years ago, the list I just rambled off, I wouldn't have been able to do a third of it, if even that much, and I'm not even counting the one-off things, doing like the Eddie Trunk 30th anniversary show where I got to play with Ace Frehley and Peter Criss, or to do the Chris Squire tribute last year on Cruise to the Edge, or to do the Tony McAlpine benefit show where I played with Zach Wilde and Steve Vai and Nuno and Tom Morello. The list goes on and on and on and on. I could sit here all day and talk about it. And the fact is, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that stuff if I had just stayed in one band for the rest of my life. And I always knew that I was more than just one band. And I always knew that I didn't want to go to my grave being just the Dream Theater guy. I knew that there was just so much more to give and so much more to live. I'm such a music fan. I want to be able to, spread my wings and expect fun. And you only live once. I want to be able to play as much music as I can with as many people as I can. And I don't know why that's a hard concept for people to understand, because I know when I left Dream Theater, everybody was like, why is he in 3 different bands? I thought he wanted to slow down. It's like, no, that's just the opposite. I wanted to spread my wings and explore it all, the total opposite of what people were thinking I wanted to do, and people were having trouble understanding the concept of being in multiple bands. But I think now, as time has gone on, I see people writing on the internet now. I get it. I understand. I was hurt 6 years ago, but now you made the right decision. I get it. And it's nice to finally see people kind of understand where I'm coming from and what it's all about for me.
Yeah, and I was always one of those people too. Of course, being a longtime Dream Theater fan, it was an initial shock that took me a bit to understand what was going on. But once I finally started to see everything that you had going on, I was so very happy for you, because knowing my experiences of being a drummer as well, of course on a much lower capacity than you, but being in a band for X number of years and not being able to do everything that you want to in a band. You either have to look at that as a job that you hate, or you want to be able to make what you want to make as a musician. And making a tough decision like that, sometimes it can go horribly wrong. But in this case, you've gotten to experience so much more that you might not have been able to. And again, just like jamming with all these great musicians, all of this great music that wouldn't be out there for all of us to enjoy had it not happened.
Yeah, I needed to do what I did because I couldn't have lived with myself wondering, well, what if? You know, I didn't want to wonder what could have happened, but I was too scared to take that leap of faith. So I had to. And believe me, everyone was shocked and hurt, but nobody was more hurt than me. You know, that was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But, you know, it's 25 years of blood, sweat, and tears, 24/7. I lived and breathed every moment of my 25 years for that band and the fans. So it wasn't like I jumped ship after 5 years. You know, it was 25 years. That's 3 times the length of the Beatles or Led Zeppelin's careers. So, you know, there was plenty of time there, and there'll always be a legacy of what I created in Dream Theater that will be there forever for the fans to enjoy. But, you know, I needed to explore other things in my life in order to be happy and fulfilled.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people outside of the music business may not understand is when there's any member of a band, whether it's the whole band or just one member of the band that's not feeling inspired when they have to write a new album, that's going to show through in the music unless you could really cover that up. I mean, I can always tell that in a band where a band just feels like, oh, they just had to make this to fill out their label, or, oh, they're just making this one to try to capture a more mainstream audience rather than the music they want to make. And I wouldn't have wanted that to be your next album.
I mean, I always follow my heart. You know, to me, I'm not going to follow my wallet or even follow my mind. You know, my mind probably would have said, well, the rational thing is to ride this out into the sunset rest of your life and be financially set and have your audience, and you could play the same venues for the rest of your life. You know, that's the safer way, but I needed to follow my heart. And it's not just that move 6 years ago. Every decision I make, I'm following my heart. I follow with with what's going to make me happy. And not just that decision, but every decision I make is based on that. If you're not going to be happy, then why? It's not worth doing anything.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I mean, that's why I'm glad that you're taking the time to do Shattered Fortress as well, and finally be able to get that last part, that unfinished business with Dream Theater, and be able to showcase those songs live, and time given other songs that you've made in the Dream Theater time as well, just to be able to give that a proper send-off, and then be able to continue with the music that you want to make.
Well, as you said, it's unfinished business. I mean, that pretty much sums it up perfectly. You know, always my intention when writing those songs was for there to be played in their entirety from start to finish. And, not only did I not get to do that, but the fans didn't get to hear it that way. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to finally closing that chapter and having done that.
And in speaking of that, I'm assuming in 2017 that Shattered Fortress and Neal Morse would be more of the focus next year, right?
In any normal career, it would be those two, but I have a lot more brewing as well. We're about to start work on a new Flying Colors album next month.
Nice.
And I'm about to start work on a new Metal Allegiance album as well. So basically, when you're in this many bands, you can't just be content doing what you're doing where your feet are. You have to always project 6 to 9 months in advance and plant the seeds, well in advance and look ahead. So that's what I constantly have to do when I'm juggling so many bands. But yeah, I would say 2017, in a nutshell, the first half will pretty much be focused on the Neal More Band and all the touring we have planned for the Similitude. Then come summertime, I'll be doing these one-offs with Shattered Fortress, and then depending on how the Flying Colors and the Metal Allegiance sessions go, those should start to appear, later in 2017, and I could start thinking about activities with those two bands and projects. And then even beyond that, I have another secret thing that's brewing as well, so that will somehow start to evolve and become known throughout 2017 as well. So yeah, there's no shortage of things going on.
And again, just being able to write with your creativity like that. I mean, Neal Morse, Shattered Fortress, Metal Allegiance, Flying Colors, being able to showcase all of those different sides. I mean, artistically, that's got to be a great accomplishment to be able to do that.
It is. It's like what we've been talking about this whole conversation. It really is. I couldn't be happier or more satisfied, both creatively and personally.
Yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to that secret project. That this is the first I'm hearing of it, so I'm very excited. I'm trying to keep it a little.
This is the first I'm mentioning it, actually.
Oh, really? Breaking news, Blabbermouth.
Yeah.
Blabbermouth. But I mean, that's really cool that you have even more projects lining up in the future. I mean, showcasing even more. And I'm taking a guess it'd be something a little different than what you're currently doing right now. But again, I can't wait to see what you're going to be doing in a new project.
Yep, time will tell. You'll know soon enough. But and as I mentioned earlier, I would be completely open to any kind of hired gun kind of gig that might, turn up as well. When the gigs like Avenged Sevenfold and Twisted Sister came up so unexpectedly in my life and career. So you never know when a situation like that may arise, and you may get a phone call to fill in, on a Whitesnake tour or a Journey tour or Bad Company tour, whatever, Five Finger Death Punch. I would be happy filling in and playing with, any number of bands. So, I'm always up for that as well, which is always something that's unplanned and unexpected, but something that I would surely welcome.
When you do those situations where you are the hired gun, what have you learned from working with bands like Twisted Sister and Avenged Sevenfold, where you're not in charge?
Well, in both of those cases, I had to come on board for a drummer that sadly had passed away. So in both of those cases, I had to be extremely respectful to the situation I was coming into. And in both of those cases, I think I definitely toned down my stage presence. I didn't want to attract attention. Normally on stage, I've got that Keith Moon, Lars Ulrich kind of presence where I want to be, the center of attention and attract attention, and, I just love hamming it up on stage. But in the cases with Twisted and Avenged, I was coming in for a fallen brother, and I really needed to kind of be more about. So in those two cases, I had to learn to kind of downplay it a little bit, and be there for the band, be there for the song, try to be respectful of the drummer's drum parts, and not try to inject too much of myself. I know a lot of people, when I came on board with Twisted, were like, oh my God, he's going to be playing all this technical stuff. And it's like, no, I knew my place. I was respectful to AJ and the band's legacy. And, so in the cases of those hired gun situations, that's the most important thing. You want to kind of pay tribute and be respectful to the person that was there before you and not inject too much of yourself into it.
And with that said, in either Avenged or Twisted, was there any particular songs that were kind of challenging for you, or were you able to get it pretty much off the bat?
Yeah, to be honest, they were easy gigs. They're fun, and but honestly, play like I said earlier, the drumming is the easiest part of my gig. No matter what style it is, that's the part that comes second nature. Whether I'm playing, thrash stuff in Metal Allegiance or playing Twisted Sister songs, I don't know. I don't really have to think about the drums. It comes very naturally to me. I don't have to sit at home and practice and transcribe and. I basically will listen to a song, know the arrangement, and I could step up and play it. It was the same, I also did fill-in gigs with Stone Sour and with Fates Warning and with Overkill. In all these cases, I just went in, listened to the music, and played. I don't really have to think about the drums. It's really very, very second nature for me.
And that's what always inspired me as a drummer, and that's why I've always considered you to be my favorite drummer of all time, is because of how much your range can be. And it's changed my way of playing as well, being able to hear what the drums are doing and being able to adapt to the style of music that I'm playing. I try to emulate that so much, and I've learned that from you.
Thank you. Well, adapting and being able to adapt and kind of morph and be a chameleon is important. But that being said, I think it's also important to still have a style that's recognizable. And all of my favorite drummers are the type of drummers where you could hear them in a song and immediately know it's them, just from the style. And I somehow I don't know the answer to this. I don't know how you achieve this, but I think you listen to a Flying Colors album and a Metal Legions album and a Winery Dogs album, stylistically they're three different worlds, and in all cases I kind of had to adapt to a style. But I think in all three cases you can kind of tell it's me. It's got personality. I never want to sound like a drum machine. And that's one of the things that's blowing my mind watching Max, like recording the drum tracks for the Next to None album. I mean, he's got personality. He sounds like a real drummer. There's a lot of drummers that play in the genre that Max is playing in. I don't want to pinpoint bands or drummers, but this whole kind of gent sound and style that's out there. The drummers kind of sound like drum machines. Max is doing this kind of style, but it sounds like there's a person there. It's a human. There's a character and a personality there, and I think that is so important. And coming back to what you're asking, with me playing in all these different bands and adapting, I still want to sound like me. I still want to sound like Mike Portnoy, no matter who I'm playing with. But I still have to be respectful and adapt to the different scenarios as well.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, I was definitely going to bring up Max as well, especially when I got to talk to him last year and I got to fully digest the new Next to None album. Like, I hear a real drummer that's being played. I don't hear nothing but sound samples. I don't just hear Drum Kit from Hell. I hear a real kit being played by a real drummer. And that is becoming such a lost art. And I'm glad to see that there's still some musicians that really want to keep that spirit alive.
Totally. And Max is totally like that. I mean, I cannot stress enough how he reminds me of me at his age. I mean, he's just such a little mini me. It's really awesome. He sounds like, when I hear him play, he sounds like a cross between me and like Chris Adler from Lamb of God. And you know, there's a real I don't know, a real range in his style that is amazing, and people are gonna be blown away by this new album. I think their last album was really great. You know, they were 15, 16 years old when they made that, but now this next album, you know, they're adults now. They're all entering their 20s, and they can now be looked at the same way that I was looked at when Dream Theater first came out. So I think they will start to now shake the teenage band stigma, and now start to really establish themselves as a great band just for what they do in their own right.
Yeah, and that's what I was telling him last year when I heard the album, because I know sometimes there is that stigma, especially online. It says, oh, they're young, they can't really be that good at their instruments, they can't write that quality of music. But when you finally listen to it, for a debut, it's such an impressive record.
Yeah.
And the longer that you stay in a band, the more chemistry that you get to make and more better songs come out of it.
Well, I think A Light in the Dark was great for what it was, but that was there when Dream and Day Unite. I think they are now making their images and words, and it's going to blow people's minds. And I should also mention they have a new guitar player who's just an absolute shredder, and he just raised the bar in the band as well. So it's just really amazing. I can't wait for people to hear it.
One thing I was curious about that, when Max was picking out his kit, when he first really started to jam and play in bands and play music, how much advice did you give him for putting a setup together?
None. He's his own man. He's his own, you know, I don't give him lessons. I don't teach him. I don't give him advice. He's a smart kid, and he knows what he likes, and he knows what he wants. And he's the type that goes online and goes onto YouTube and watches all the different Sabian demonstrations with all the different cymbals and all the different Tama kits that are out there. And he'll ask me, hey, can we get this or can we get that? And when he put together his kit for this album that they're recording, I mean, that was all his mind and his creation, and he put together this massive kit, which once again totally reminded of me when I was his age. And but that's all him. If he has a question, of course I'm here to answer it and give him advice. But for the most part, he's his own person.
And with that, I mean, being able to do that at such a young age and being able to become that full-fledged. I mean, at his age, I wish I was playing as good as he's doing right now, and it's just incredible to see the spirit he has. Have you learned anything from his playing?
Absolutely. There's a moment on the new Neal More Band album where I absolutely was doing a Max fill. There was this little fill in the overture, and then I think it also comes back towards the end of Slave to Your Mind, where I do this kind of double bass triplet groove, and the fill is on the ice bell. Like, I actually play the fill rather than on a tom or a stack. I do it on the ice bell. And that's absolutely something that I caught from Max.
Yeah, I know the parts that you're talking about right now. It's like I'm hearing it in my head right now, and I can totally see that.
I mean, Max is creating I hate, this is turning into the Max Portnoy interview, but I have to say, his drum performance on their next album is probably sicker than any drum performance of my entire career. I mean, it's just, his parts are incredibly thoughtful and developed and creative, and like, his drum parts are just, and he's technically doing a lot of things that I can't do. He's growing up in the age of the blast beat, so he's able to do all these crazy fast things that I can't do. My limbs just don't do those things. So yeah, I can't stress enough how proud I am of him, and he's absolutely carrying the Portnoy torch into the future.
And I'm glad to see that both father and son get to play the same festival that I get to be at next year for Proc Power,
Yeah,
because I
it's gonna be
finally
great.
get to see Next to None, and I get to see you play after, I think it was 2010 or 2009 was the last time I got to see you play in Minnesota, so it's going to be a great time to be able to see you both at Proc Power.
Great.
So I know the end of the year is coming up, and I know, well, you inspired me when it comes to this, putting out your best of the year, whether it comes to TV or movies or music. Is there anything in particular that stands out that you can mention that stuck out to you this year?
Actually, it's been a great year for music, actually. There's been a lot of awesome albums this year. And I don't know, my lists usually have a little bit of genre. So as far as like the heavy stuff, what came out this year that I liked that was heavy? I mean, I love like the new Gojira and the new Meshuggah and the Testament. New Metallica I like a lot. So that's kind of the heavy stuff. And then there's the more like weirder, obscure stuff, like the latest Avatar album I really like. I'd never heard those guys until this year, and I was really blown away by them. And then bands like, Crowbot and I don't know, what else? Biffy Clyro I really like. They're a little more mainstream, but pretty cool. I like the new Avenged Sevenfold album. I was surprisingly very into that. What else? I don't know. It's been a good year for music. Of course, the new Haken album. There's just been so much good stuff. As far as movies and TV, I think TV's been much better than movies. TV this year had The Night Of, which I thought was amazing. Walking Dead is just insane right now with everything that's going on with Negan and stuff. Black Mirror, I absolutely love. Ray Donovan. I guess we're coming up on the holidays, so I guess I got to start putting my list together. So soon enough, I'll put it out there. But I guess there's a little sneak preview off the top of my head.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, and ever since I first joined the Mike Portnoy forum and I started looking at those lists, that inspired me to put my own list together, and that's exactly why I try to showcase as much music as possible, since that's the one thing that I know people notice me for is showcasing the music that I enjoy. And that came from just being able to see your best ofs and discovering so much music just from the music that you show off at the end of the year.
It's about, especially that's why I love social media. There's a lot of things to hate about social media too.
Oh yes, very much so.
Is that interaction and that fans can talk to each other. And when I was starting out in the 80s and 90s, I was always the one that was in charge of Dream Theater's mail, and I would always answer the fan mail, and I would try to stay in touch with the fans as best as possible. And back then, I would talk about the bands I was listening to, whether it be Watchtower or Fate's Warning. I would talk about them in interviews, but really that's kind of where it all ended. The open communication and the interaction and talking about bands you like and movies you like. There was not that kind of open forum back then. So once the internet came around in the late 90s with message boards and the It's a Jam mailing list and stuff that I used to interact on, and now with social media, I embrace it. I love it. I love being able to not only post what I'm listening to and liking, but reading what other people are listening to and liking and learning from that.
Yeah, I'm hoping with my list, if you get a chance to check out my list at all when I finally get that rolling, that maybe I can help you discover a new band or two that you would enjoy.
I'll absolutely look for it, and I'm sure I'll end up checking some of them out, and I'm probably become a new fan because of that.
Oh, awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so very much for taking all of this time to be able to talk to me. A longtime fan since 2003. Getting to meet you once at Ellis Drum Shop before Progressive Nation, and having you sign my Melody Master snare, and just all the great music that you've given the world in your whole career, and now taking the time to talk to me as long as you have so far. Thank you so very much for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure, man. No problem at all.
Before we're done, is there anything else you would like to mention that I haven't brought up yet?
God, not that I could think of off the top of my head. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I appreciate that. Thank you.